30 years, 30 fears. That was the symbol of the 30th anniversary of Halloween Horror Nights. And it was a solid year for Halloween Horror Nights, all things considered. And much like in 2018 and 2019, I figured, hey, might as well rank them. Well, we got 10 houses to get through, so no real reason to slow us down. Let's get started. Now, I've said many times on these rankings that Halloween Horror Nights does a great job at recreating the films that they are presenting in these houses. That was not true for Texas Chainsaw Massacre. This house was an absolute mess if you tried to compare it to the movie, because it didn't follow the movie at all. It had a couple scenes from the movie. The gas station was there. The Franklin, I believe that was the name of the wheelchair, man was there. I mean, yeah, and you had Leatherface, and probably the best the thing in the house was the room where the furniture was made from bones. But I mean, they took stuff from Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. I think they had stuff from the fourth one. I don't even remember where Inigo DeVita is, which movie it's in. It's not from the first movie. I could tell you that. I mean, if you want to do a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house and say it's based on the first movie, then do it from the first movie. And if you want to do one off the second movie, which Chop Top is in, because he's in this house, do it from the second movie. I would have loved to have gone through a Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 house. I mean, there was so much about this house that I was looking forward to that I was just very disappointed in. And yeah, I know that they've done a Texas Chainsaw Massacre house, but I ain't never been through it. So that's why this is number 10. It was just very disappointing. Now, I didn't quite know how to take the Bride of Frankenstein house walking into it. I knew that they weren't going to follow this film either, because, Bride of Frankenstein's such a crazy movie with the shrinking people and the glass bottles. I don't know. It's been quite a few years since I've seen it. But, what they did with it was kind of, good. I mean, trying to follow the story is a little confusing when you have, I think they're using Dracula's brides to try to, and the other monsters to try to recreate, Frankenstein's monster, as the bride wants to bring, him back. Kind of odd considering how she's terrified of him in the actual movie. But there just is not anything in this house that really stands out and makes you want to go through it again. And that's one of the things from Halloween Horror Nights that, I think a lot of people think about as, your desire to go through it again, basically. And yeah, Bride of Frankenstein was just one that once I went through it again, I was like, I couldn't care less to go through it again. So it just wasn't a solid house. And now for Welcome to Scary. One of the houses that, when it was first revealed, I was, really excited for. There was something about this 50s style horror themed where in my mind, everybody in this town was kind of going crazy and it turned into a madhouse, but it was set in the 50s or the 60s. And I don't know what it was, but for whatever reason, I was into it and I was liking the idea. And then when I walked in, I don't know what I was seeing, because it seemed like we were underground, and it seemed like there were these demons, and I didn't 100% know what I was, you know, seeing. Now I do know, much like Nightingales, much like I said with Carnival Graveyard, the town of Cary is deeply tied into the Halloween Horror Nights lore. So that takes away a little bit of it. Now, the reason why this is above, Bride of Frankenstein and Texas Chainsaw Massacre is all that twisted 50s and 60s horror stuff does come into play about halfway through the house. That does start to happen. So once I got through that first half of the house where I'm basically saying, what the hell's going on here? I did start to get that stuff that I really liked. And then that house started to kick in high gear, and it became a whole lot of fun. So yeah, I was kind of disappointed with the first half of the house, but I really liked the second half of the house. So what happens when a kid says he's not going to give his tooth to the tooth fairy? You get the Revenge of the Tooth Fairy house. The first house that I would say was the first solid, really good house all throughout. I liked Revenge of the Tooth Fairy. I liked how, it started out as this storybook, beginning, and then you walked into the storybook, and, it just had a lot of good scares after that. It was, the monster designs of, I guess, the Tooth Fairy minions, I don't know what those things were really cool. And it's just there was something about this house, and it might be the people we were with went in it before us and were not fans of it and said, hey, it wasn't a good house, whatever. So, man, when we walked in there, the expectations were kind of low. So, granted on that front. But I don't know, man. We went through it. The good house. We were liking it. I mean, the thing I have to talk up the most of this house was definitely, I think, the beginning of it. That storybook scene. There was something about the way it looked. And just walking into it, it worked out, just so well. And I mean, they also did a great job at hiding the characters. I mean, I also remember just with simple things, having you walk through bloody, I think they were bed sheets. The Tooth Fairy was, I feel, a simple concept, but I feel it worked very well. So I don't know what it is with this location, but on the event, but Puppet Theater and Nightingales, they have amazing facades, and I just have to start out with that. Now, that being said, with the house as a total, this was another fantastic house, and I remember this was basically the first house that they announced for this, if you don't include the fact that they kind of opened, Bride of Frankenstein, Tooth Fairy, and Beetlejuice, after the event got canceled for 2020. But they kind of did that little half announcement saying that Puppet Theater was, going to be a house in 2021. And man, this house was very impressive, very cool. I could see why they wanted to show it off really early. I mean, it was another one of those houses that had a smell as a factor. And, obviously with they're going with a theater theme. They wanted to use that kind of baby powder smell to go with it. I mean, I really remember that image of they had a stage and kind of that balcony, scene up the top, it made it feel a lot bigger than it really was. But recreating some of the old, play scenes like from Hamlet, Puppet Theater was easily one of the best little houses, but it did fall short, I think, in the memorability area, which is why it isn't, really high up there. So, it is what it is. All right, Wicked Growth is a house that I have no idea what the story of it is. I mean, I think the town is overgrown with a pumpkin patch, and I know that there was a witch in there, so maybe she did it. But I could tell you that the house was awesome, and the reason why it was awesome is the environment and the setup. I mean, like, walking through the overgrown houses was just so cool. It had a ton of good scares with a ton of good character designs. The people with the pumpkin heads with the face that's kind of carved out at the front. I mean, the witch itself, you get to go like to that underground, the pumpkin grove. Once again, as I was saying with Puppet Theater, with the smells, this had the smell. First off, I mean, walking right in, you get hit with the, like, kind of walking through a pumpkin grove, or something like. So it's a very earthy kind of smell. Then later on, you get that huge hit of like, almost like pumpkin spice smell. It's very, very, very strong. And much like a lot of these houses, there's usually one big thing, one big scene that you could remember. And in this one, I guess the Pumpkin Lord. I don't know what he would be, but he's just coming out of the pumpkin. It's really good. This house just stood out more pronounced than, like I said, Puppet Theater did. And it is the reason why these two houses, which very much kind of would go neck and neck, I feel like this one just edges it out when it comes to it. So that's why it places just a notch above it. So Case Files was is the house that I think a lot of people are pegging as one of their favorite houses. For good reason. This is the house that is all theming. And basically, because the story of it seems to be based around a guy finding, like, basically a notebook of old files, or case files, of mythical, cases that this detective went on. I could be very off on what they're going for, but that's what it seemed like walking through the house. And you kind of go through the times of, this detective's different experiences with, all these different things that he came across, whether it be like, a demon lady or, man, I don't know, like basically just a bunch of monsters. And it's one of those things where I said that there's usually like one big thing in a lot of these houses. This house doesn't really have that. What this house has is, like I said, theming. It makes you feel like you're in a noir movie, and it does it very well, which is why I could see this being a lot of people's favorite house. I mean, look, I got it this high on this list because it does its job so well. My only issue is the 3 houses I have above it, I just like more. It's not a shot at this house as much as it just didn't work for me as well as it worked for other people. I love Case Files. I would gladly go through it again if I had the opportunity. It was one of their best houses. And now for, as I said, what I hope is a regular occurrence, the Funhouse of Halloween Horror Nights, Beetlejuice. I mean, what can you say that wasn't said about Killer Clowns, that wasn't said about Ghostbusters? They just do what you're supposed to do in this kind of a house. They hit all the scenes that you would want to hit. You know, you want to see the attic of the house, of the family house with the, model of the town. It's in there. You want to see the waiting room with all the deceased people. It's there. You want to see the flattened guy going, getting pulled over on the chain. It's there. That is what these fun houses need to be. They need to be recreations of the movie. And as you get a walk through the scenes of the movie. And much like I said, I don't 100% remember it was Nightingales where I missed the lion. I also missed their big thing in this house too. I missed the sandworm at the end of the house. But that's their big thing in this house. They want to give you one of the sandworms from Beetlejuice. But, they use a lot of the great lines, which are obviously pretty much all from the Michael Keaton character Beetlejuice in the movie. They get put into this house. I mean, the warped scenery that comes basically from the mind of Tim Burton, that was what I was really excited to see in a Beetlejuice house. It's in here. That's why I thought this house would work when I saw it announced, and it works when you get a walk through it. This was a house that I was excited for, and it didn't disappoint. It really is that simple. Beetlejuice was a good house. Now I was kicking back and forth between which would be, number 2, Beetlejuice or Haunting a Hill House. But in the end of the day, I determined that, it's a Halloween event, and I think the scares got to go above the fun house sometimes. And I had to give it to Hill House because I really felt that they were kind of even on my enjoyment. And when when it came to a tie, I was going to give it to the more a haunted house compared to the fun house aspect of the two. But yeah, similar to Beetlejuice, they hit the scenes that you would want from the Netflix show. Going in, everybody wanted to see the facade be the house, and knowing that it was going to be in one of the kind of more of the warehouses, you weren't going to see the facade outside. But as soon as you walked into the warehouse, it was just the house sitting there. So, who really cares at that point? But, every one of the kind of memorable characters, like the bowler hat guy, I don't exactly remember his name. Obviously the bent neck lady, they're all there. And they jump out at just the right times to give you just the right scares. Everything works very well in this house, especially the scene that I thought was the best scene in the show. And that is the basement scene. I was like, walking into the house, that was the scene where I was like, okay, this is the scene that you got to do right. I can't wait to see the scene in the house. And I thought that was definitely the creepiest environment in the entire house. And it was the creepiest scene. Well, at least the creepiest creature design in the entire house. I love the Haunting a Hill House, house. And I really, high recommendation. Well, my number one, it was speculated all leading up to it, and I think everybody was kind of expecting them to do a grand house with all the icons, and you got one. And it had a lot of expectations to live up to, and I really feel like that's exactly what it did. It gave you exactly, I feel, what it wanted. It gave pretty much every icon their own little section that you wanted them to have in the house, as well as an introduction. As an individual who really doesn't know a lot about the history of the event past the few that I have been to, I know the names of these icons, but I don't know a lot of the lore of the event. Really, it's nice that they kind of make it to where you don't really need to know them. You can just walk through this house and basically pick up what's going on with all of these characters and kind of what they are. Another nice touch that they did in this house was in each individual icon, they had their victims wearing the shirts of each individual Halloween Horror Nights that they debuted in. That was a beautiful touch. Legitimately, the only complaint I could actually have at this house was at the very end of the house. They have you walk down a hallway where their whole gimmick is they're having basically all the icons coming at you from both the right and the left. And then at the end of the hallway, there's a throne. Now, we walked through this house twice, and the first time we walked through it was the perfect scenario. As you're walking through this hallway, on the right and the left, you have these different icons, and on the throne, you have Jack the Clown. And it was perfect scenario. It's exactly what you would expect. All right, great. We walk out. We walk through the house the second time. Same scenarios. Right, left, icons up there. And I don't remember who it was, but random different icon on the throne. And we all left that house saying the same thing. How is that throne not reserved just for that clown? It felt so logical. That's literally the only complaint I could have against that house. Because other than that, that house was a perfect house of celebration of those icons. But come on, only one person should be able to sit on that throne for that house. Come on, are you serious? Only one person. Let's be honest. But other than that, great house. So there it is, Halloween Horror Nights 30. Another solid event, another great event, another good time. And considering I am recording this in October of 2021, that means I'm a year out from next year's Halloween Horror Nights. But I wanted to get all three of these in before Halloween of this year. And I successfully did that. So, yay. But, this event is, it's a good old time. It's great fun. And it's something to look forward to every year. I can't wait for Halloween Horror Nights 31. And I very much plan to be at that one. And I very much plan to rank those houses as well. I can't wait to see what houses they do. I very much hope another fun house. Who knows? Maybe I'll do a video with some ideas on what houses I would like to see at future Halloween Horror Nights. Doesn't have to be the next one. Could be future ones. Excuse me. But I hope you liked this video. If you did, maybe you leave a like, and maybe you can also subscribe. Thank you.